Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, thanks for joining me for another live post-game reaction here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. I am, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. I got my boy Jordan Bowman in the back, going to join us momentarily. But before we get into the post-game reaction, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Hit that like button for us. It really helps the channel out, especially on these live videos. Thank you guys all for showing up. I know this is a little different than we normally run the post-game lives. Normally, it's immediately following the game, 10 or 15 minutes after the game. We pop on here. We do our post-game live reaction. Unfortunately, I had a prior obligation. My daughter had a softball game this afternoon, and I was at the softball game during the football game. So I was not able to do the post-game live reaction immediately following it. But here we are regardless. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'll bring on my co-host here, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing today, man? It's good to be back in the win column. It's good to finally have a win in the ACC. So it's not all bad. It's not all bad.
Yeah, absolutely. It just given how the first 4 weeks went for this team, I think it was good to see them come out and get a fairly comfortable win. Now we'll talk about some of the hiccups and stuff that this team is still susceptible to. But you went on the road. At the end of the day, you went on the road and beat an undefeated team by 17 points, and you didn't shoot yourself in the foot too often. Like you had in your first 4 games. And so you're starting to see the improvement. And it really feels like your quarterback is settling in and kind of being really, really poised and confident in what he's doing. He wasn't perfect, but he made some pretty Cade made some pretty impressive elite throws in this game and kept drives alive single-handedly for Clemson at times. So, when you see the stuff like that, that gives you confidence going forward. And this team is still, they still want to win football games. There were some narratives, I don't think within the Clemson fan base too much, but from outsiders that thought that, their playoff hopes are pretty much dashed at this point, and the ACC championship feels like a long shot. Is there a quit factor and all of that, or is this team going to even be fired up for the rest of the year? And think you put that narrative to bed, especially with how you came out and started the game. So, it wasn't perfect. There were some ugly moments, but you won and you beat what I think is a pretty good Syracuse team on the road, in a place where you have traditionally had much worse performances than the one we saw today.
Oh, absolutely. Much worse performances in that stadium. That stadium has been somewhat of a nightmare for our Clemson Tigers at times in previous seasons. This game has never been one that has been particularly very comfortable very many times. So it's good to see our Tigers travel up way up north to the North Country in Syracuse, New York, and come out with a good W against, say what you want about Syracuse, but it was a 4-0 team. And there were, certain people out there that were picking Clemson to lose this game, running with the narrative that you kind of mentioned, talking about, this team doesn't have anything to play for. Are they going to quit on the coaching staff? Are players that, have an NFL future going to, kind of start worrying about that instead of worrying about winning games? That narrative was all out there on the table this week. And I think this Clemson team has put those narratives to bed for sure. They have shown that they are still playing with heart. They're still playing with determination. They still feel that clearly they have something to play for, regardless of what the national media types and others may think of their season to this point. But before we get into it too much, let's do a shout out to the chat section real quick. All of our people getting in here. We got 13 people in here right now. Thank you so much for getting in here. Like I said before, I know this is a little bit later than we normally do our post-game lives, but we appreciate you guys stopping by. Our boy WB2DX gets in, or what was his name?
Tiggs.
Tiggs, that's it. Thank you for helping me out with that. Tiggs is in here. Thank you so much, man. You're always in here supporting the channel, and we appreciate it. Isaac Smith is in here. Drew G. Try that in a small town is in here. Steele Gamble, John Sarian, Jonathan Benton, John Smith. Let's see. See if I'm trying. See, I don't want to miss anybody. I think that's everybody. I think I hit everybody. All right. Yeah, I think that's everybody. So, again, thank you, everybody, for getting in here. Get your comments in here. As we get through our kind of monologue and me and Jordan's back and forth, we will get into the comment section, see what you guys are talking about, and chop it up with you guys for the last 15 or so minutes of the show. So, really appreciate it. Steel Gamble gets in with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, man, for supporting the channel. It goes a long way around here, and we really do appreciate it. He said Oscar for Cade for that sideline flop.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a big one too. I mean, it was on third down, and it extended one of your drives. I mean, that was. It still was a penalty because the Syracuse defender, I think it was Marlo Wax, just while he was out of bounds, just walked over to him and bumped into him.
Yeah,
they did a good job of selling it, making sure the ref saw the contact and
that's
stuff.
Right.
And that was a big penalty in Clemson's favor. But it was a penalty worthy regardless whether he had flopped or not. But I think that flop definitely caught the attention of the referees and made sure that Syracuse was penalized for that. So yeah, just one of many plays that Cade made in this game that helped this team offensively. It was someone said when I tweeted it out, I said W flop by Cade, and someone replied and said that was like T-Law-esque, and
yeah.
that was like a T-Law-esque flop. Like it reminds me of in the Miami game. I remember there like Trevor drew like. I think I don't know if he drew two targeting penalties. I know there was one where he kind of sold the hit.
Sometimes you gotta sell it to get the referee to see what's going on over there. So, hey, good on Cade, man. He got it. He did what he had to do to extend a drive, and you love to see it. Try that in a small town says that was a Heisman worthy flop right there.
Yeah, that was his Heisman moment right there.
Yeah, play that in the Heisman reel for sure. Tiggs gets in and says, who do we have as wide receiver 1 right now?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. I don't know.
He says it's Tyler Brown. I tend to agree. That dude just put up we were just talking about it backstage before we came on live. He had a monster stat line. 8 receptions for 151 yards. Absolutely balling out of his mind. This dude he's dynamic. He's just an amazing player. I'm glad we got him. I can tell you that because right now we need him.
Yeah, one of those things. And it was a very under the radar pickup. Was not a highly rated guy coming out of high school. He was a 3-star. Playing at Greenville. He's teammates with Mazio Bennett and Colin Sadler. And he was arguably their best offensive player while he was there, but he didn't really get a whole lot of love from recruiting sites, and he was committed to Minnesota. He didn't have a ton of big time Power 5 offers. Clemson got in late when they didn't land some of their higher priority targets, and it just goes to show you, man, like good football players are good football players. And Tyler Brown was a really good football player in high school, and it was very obvious on film that he was a very good football player. But he didn't go to camp. He wasn't a camp warrior, and he wasn't like physically the most impressive guy out there. So he got dinged for that. And but sometimes it's your eyes tell you a lot more than what the recruiting sites will give credit for. And Tyler Brown, was very obviously a very good football player, and he's come in as a very good football player, and he's stepped up in a big way when this team is needed some extra juice at the wide receiver position. And I'm not going to lie, he reminds me of some names that I don't want to say. I don't want to jinx it. But what we saw today was pretty damn special.
Yeah.
And I pray to God he stays healthy, because I think this team, him and Cade seem to have a really, really good rapport with each other, really good chemistry. They seem to know where, they seem to be on the same page, on some of those scrambles, when, Cade's rolling out to his left and he's making that tough throw to the sidelines. He did that throw twice where he was rolling out to his left and had to square up and fire a dart. And, Tyler Brown did a good job of getting open and getting separation. And that just kept Clemson's drives alive. Like that's the kind of stuff that Clemson used to do in its sleep. Quarterbacks of the past were able to do, and wide receivers of the past that were able to do that. And so, because sometimes that's just what you have to do, especially against the Syracuse defense that didn't give up a whole lot of plays through the air. They've been a pretty good pass defense. That they are predicated on not giving up big plays in the passing game. So it was just some really special stuff today from both of those guys, Cade and Tyler Brown.
Yeah, man. And just watching, I didn't get to, full disclosure for everybody out there, I did not get to watch this full game, obviously, for all the reasons I've stated before. I did go back and watch the condensed game. I watched some highlights. I got a good feel of kind of what happened in the game, looking at the stat lines and stuff like that. But it really, to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, but really today seemed like the story of the day is Cade Klubnik, right? And probably Tyler Brown as well. But really just Cade as the leader of this offense, as the guy that, we were looking for coming into this season. It seems that he's starting to become that quarterback that everyone knew and thought he would be as a Clemson Tiger, especially when we heard, the hire of Garrett Riley. Everybody was super excited. Everybody thought that, Cade, he's a perfect fit for this style of offense that Garrett Riley runs. And as we are, now 5 games into the season, Cade is starting to look comfortable. He's still getting pressured. The same pressure is still there. No doubt about that. But he's getting much more comfortable maneuvering in the pocket. Just the plays that I saw, maneuvering in that pocket, stepping up, extending plays, still keeping his eyes downfield as he's moving. And now those are turning into, as we saw quite a few times today, big pass plays. Some to Tyler Brown and some to other guys, but especially Tyler Brown today. It just seems Cade is, every game we see him play, he gets a little bit better, and he's still making a few mistakes here and there, but they're getting fewer and further between.
Absolutely, and yeah, and it's not perfect. He still makes some young quarterback mistakes. He had a couple of throws that should have been picked off, and maybe a better, and he might not be so lucky next time. But it's one of those games where that's just kind of who he is. He's going to take chances, and he's not the first Clemson quarterback that was like that. Everyone remembers how many picks Deshaun Watson threw during his career, but
a lot.
But he would make it up with a wow play and just a big play down the field, or a key scramble on 3rd down to get to move the chains. Like, that's kind of what you saw from Cade today, and that's the kind of stuff that we needed to see. And he did it without much of a run game, and I think that's another credit. I mean, Cade was creating offense for this team despite a lack of a complementary run game, and we'll talk about some of the reasons why that was. But just all in all, it was a very positive performance from your quarterback, and honestly, your receivers in general. I mean, Tyler Brown got a lot of the shine. but there were still there were other guys that made big plays. Troy Stellato, especially in that first half, and made some really, really big plays. That throw on the run by Cade on third down, Troy Stellato gets open, and Cade finds him and able to get separation. It's been really impressive to see those two guys, Tyler Brown and Troy Stellato, kind of step up and be those guys, because Tyler Brown's a true freshman, and Troy Stellato is a guy that we've had to wait a long time for, but he played. I thought he played really, really well, and he continues to make timely catches when this team needs it. So, and he's kind of another safety blanket for Cade to rely on. And then the guys that even did, had a mixed bag performance. I thought Bo Collins. I think it's so frustrating at times watching Bo Collins play football, because he'll do something really, really frustrating, like that deep shot where he just basically stopped his route and didn't continue to go. Cade throws it deep. I have to go back and watch what route he was running, but he basically stopped and gave up on the route, and you were just like, oh, okay, well, what was the point of that? Why'd you stop? And then later in the game, he completely routes up a defender and is just completely butt naked, wide open, and for an easy touchdown. And I believe that was Clemson's biggest pass play of the night and one of Cade's passing touchdowns. And you're just like, why doesn't he do that more often?
Right.
I thought Bo overall, he still had a pretty good game. He drew some pass interference flags, so that's good as well. I think that's one thing that, if you're a wide receiver and if you're not going to go and fight, and they say is like, don't let them grab you and all that, and go up and fight and get the ball. But I think Bo does a good job of at least selling and getting his head around and fighting, at least looking like he's fighting for the ball and drawing pass interference calls. And to his credit, and to be fair, some of those targets were Cade just flat out underthrowing him, and so forcing him to kind of fight back towards the ball instead of it leading him. So, but all in all, I think the wide receivers are in pretty good shape. There's some guys I wish. Well, it's probably pretty obvious who I'm talking about, but there's one guy in particular that I'm just
scratching your head about. Yeah,
so baffled with.
Yeah.
But I won't go. Someone already mentioned him in the comments.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of in the mode that I'll believe it when I see it at this point with him.
Yeah. It's certainly head scratching for that player, and you thought you would see a lot more to this point in the season out of that guy, but it just, for whatever reason, it does not seem to be coming together. I don't know if it's the injuries that he had, or maybe he's not trusting them yet, or honestly I can't come up. I can't come up with it. I don't know. It's certainly worrisome. You definitely look at him and you're like, that's a dude right there. But just because somebody looks a certain way doesn't mean they play that way. And clearly, as of right now, he's not. Not that he can't, not that he doesn't have the ability. Hopefully he gets it turned around. But right now is certainly struggling mightily. And some other guys are stepping up, so that play time is probably going to be affected by that. You got Tyler Brown showing up and showing up often, and you mentioned Troy Stellato, and a lot of these other guys. Keep
in mind, Antonio Williams is still out. So.
Yeah, Antonio Williams did not play today. Nate Wiggins did not play today. We're down Marcus Tate for the rest of the season. So we were missing a big piece of that wide receiver. Walker Parks, thank you. I'm sorry, Walker Parks, yes, out for the season. So we were missing a huge piece of that wide receiving group in Antonio Williams. So, um, we'll see if he can, get it together. But if not, that playing time's going to continue to trend in the wrong direction. So that just is what it is. But let me ask you, Jordan, since I did not get to watch the entire game today. Well, actually, before we get into that, let's highlight a couple other guys on the team. I know we talked a lot. We've talked a lot so far about Cade. We've talked about Tyler Brown and Troy Stellato and guys like that really went off and really helped this team. What are a couple other your guys that you would like to shout out before we deep dive into individual position groups and things like that you thought really came out and played well today on either side of the ball?
Yeah. I guess, I'll start with a couple more guys on offense.
Okay.
I thought the offensive line, we'll get into it, but the offensive line did not have a banner day, but I do think you saw Harris Sewell get in there, and I thought he played really well, at least better than the guy he came in for. Well, both guys that he came in for. Right guard is kind of an issue right now, and I thought Harris Sewell came in and he didn't look worse than them, and I thought at times some of Clemson's better runs were, especially to the right side, were when he was in the game. So I thought he played well, and I'm kind of the opinion that he should continue to play. I think he has the highest ceiling of anybody on that interior, and he's a true freshman. I mean, I think it'd be good to get him those reps, and I'm glad that we saw him in that second half, because I was getting really frustrated with who we were trotting out there. So I think I'd give him a shout out. And then defensively, I think there were a lot of guys that stood out to me and played really well. I thought the defensive line in general played pretty strong. I mean, TJ Parker.
That dude is an animal, man.
Yeah, TJ Parker is incredible. He is. Clemson hasn't had an edge rusher like him in a minute. So I thought that was he was phenomenal. Peter Woods, I thought he played extremely well. He's not lighting up the stat sheet, but he is really disruptive, and he was getting a ton of pressures and really making life hard for that Syracuse offensive line. XT thought he played really well. He recovered that fumble. He had a couple of other really nice plays. He got in the backfield, some run stops. Got held on one run. He probably would have gotten another. He got held on it. And that they actually called for once. So I thought that the defensive line had a really nice day. 5 sacks. Anytime you force 5 sacks, you're doing really good. Rook and Tyler Davis continue to. They're just those guys are. It's almost like you don't even really think about them, because when they're in, like, they're just constantly making plays. Rook got a sack today. Tyler Davis was just extremely disruptive in the run game. Those guys are just really good and experienced, and Clemson's lucky to have them. So yeah, defensive line played well. The back seven was kind of up and down, but I'll give a shout out to Khalil Barnes. Thought he played really well. Andrew Makuba was pretty good in coverage today. The corners, we'll talk about that. And I think Barrett Carter played pretty well today. And I thought Jeremiah Trotter played a better second half for the most part. Really the back end of the third quarter and fourth quarter, I thought he kind of put it together. After a not very good first half, first 2.5 quarters. But still, overall, it was a good day for the defense. I mean, you held them to 289 yards of offense. They really couldn't run the ball. 5 sacks, a lot of tackles for loss. can't really complain too much. I know there's been, Wes has gotten a lot of criticism, and I think some of it is a little too much. He deserves criticism at times, and there were, it's not perfect. But I think some people are expecting him to be Brent Venables, and he's not. But I think this is a very good defense, and I don't think there's too much to complain about besides minor nitpicks and certain players not doing what they need to be.
All right. Just some of the few things that I saw by watching the condensed version of the game and some of the highlights is obviously TJ Parker's all over the field, man. Every time he's all over the field. He's in on sacks. He's in on half sacks. He really jumped off the page, as he does literally every game the dude plays. It's absolutely amazing. How about our boy XT with that return down the sideline for that little fumble scoop up? He looked pretty athletic out there, man. He was moving.
He would have taken it for 6 if he hadn't stumbled when he first grabbed it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to tackle that dude running full speed down the field. He looks like a load. So shout out to him. Continuing to gain his momentum this season. Started out, I think, a little slow, but the past couple games, I think he's really started to. You started to feel his presence in the game, and then obviously the middle of our defensive line, like you said. I mean, they're just at this point they feel so consistent that, like you said, you almost don't even recognize them anymore. It's like you just expect them to do what they do, but they're so disruptive. They're so hard to block, and we could just roll them out there. I mean, the freshman Peter Woods, right? That dude is an absolute animal. Then you got Tyler Davis, Ruka. I mean, you got all these dudes that you can just roll in there, play after
Peyton
play.
recovered the fumble. That first Garrett Trader fumble. It was good to see him get in there.
Yeah, Peyton. I mean, you could just keep going down the line of defensive tackles, and regardless of who's in the game, they seem to be affecting the game and being disruptive all the same, regardless of who it is. I saw Barrett Carter in on a couple big plays today. I think he really had a really good game, last week, and I think that definitely extended into this week. Some passing plays were given up in this game, obviously, with Garrett Schrader and his legs and his ability to create. But I definitely think we're missing Nate Wiggins. That's for sure. But I want to kind of go back to the other side of the ball in the offense. And again, I was not able to watch this entire game. Okay. But just looking at our rushing numbers for the game, it looked like Clemson struggled mightily to run the ball, especially consistency. Running the ball. There were a couple big runs there. I think Shipley had a pretty big one. Maffa had that one big one after the Syracuse turnover. He took it in for the score that was kind of the dagger in the game that kind of sealed it to a 31-14 victory.
And that run wasn't blocked well, by the way.
It was not blocked well. He made a good cut, and he got out there, and all of the Syracuse defenders were unfortunately at the line of scrimmage, and as soon as he broke through that, there was nobody there to touch him. So he scampers in and scores that final touchdown. But our rushing numbers were not well. We only rushed for 126 yards, only an average of 3.6 yards per carry. That's pretty low for this Clemson team. And for, what I talked about coming into this game, an undersized defensive line, I thought Clemson would really be able to run the ball really well. They did last year against a similar Syracuse team. What were kind of your thoughts on the running game today? Why was it such a struggle for the Tigers? And, thoughts about the offensive line as a whole?
Yeah. Just watching this team try to run the ball was a very frustrating experience. And what I think it feels like this offensive line just does not handle. It seems like they can't handle any type of speed or athleticism up front. and they're not really able to kind of just rein it in and push a defensive line around. They just are not very physical up front, and that's really disappointing when you're going up against a defensive line whose nose tackle is 270 pounds. Like that you won't face a smaller defensive line on your schedule, and you're struggling to run the ball. You ran the ball better last week against a better Florida State team, a much better Florida State defensive line, which is strange because they didn't run the ball that well, but somehow that performance was better, especially given the opponent. It's not very. It's clear they don't have a great idea about who they want to be the starting five. You saw, Mitchell Mays, trot out there, and he continues to not be the answer. You saw Trent Howard get in there during the game at right guard. Wasn't much better. It's not a very good situation right now. You're missing Walker Parks right now. That's very obvious because
it looks a lot like it kind of looks a lot like last year when Walker Parks went down later in the season. And I know me and you talked on a few of our post games about how different the offensive line looked when he was out of the lineup, and I think that's certainly manifesting itself this season so far.
Yeah, it definitely is, and really the right side in general. It's frustrating. I think Blake Miller has regressed. He's not playing particularly well, at least in run blocking. I thought pass protection was okay. It was fine today, but in general, but that right side of the offensive line has not been good, and I really don't know what the answer is. I'm just of the opinion you play Harris Sewell, you let him get the reps, you let him get the experience, let him mess up, because at this point it can't be any worse. I mean, when I went back and watched the Florida State game, I saw Mitchell Mays getting pushed back into the pocket multiple times, straight up whiffing on blocking assignments multiple times. It's just the play, the level of play you're getting there it's not even average, it's bad. Yeah. And it's hard to run the ball. When it's hard to run the ball when the defense knows you can only really run it effectively on one side, and even then it wasn't perfect today. Offensive line was not very good, and they played worse today. They played worse today than they did last week, and that's a little concerning. But I have to remind myself that, hey, progress is not always linear. So people that expect a team to just even just a position group to improve on their performance each week, that's not quite how this sport works, and that's not how it happens. But it is pretty disappointing knowing that you were playing a defensive line that you should have been able to push around and out physical a little bit better than you did, and you didn't. Last year you ran for 200 plus yards on them. In Death Valley last year. I mean, that defensive line hasn't changed much. That defensive front hasn't changed much.
No.
Still they were undersized last year, and you did what you were supposed to do when you decided to commit to running the football.
Yeah, when we finally committed to running the football.
Yeah, and not turning the ball over. That because that was a big thing as well in that game, which, hey, Clemson only turned the ball over once. They don't. This team doesn't seem to have a turnover-free game in them, but regardless, that was a very wimpy, pathetic performance in the run game, and you did enough to win because Cade is made some plays, he extended some plays with his legs, and that was the difference. But I mean, you have what you have now. You can't do much to change. But I am very much questioning the coaching and ability that this offensive line is getting, because they're just not playing up to what they should be week to week.
Yeah, and I guess, one of the most frustrating things about this offensive line is, you heard such good things coming out of fall camp about this offensive. Oh, we got 10, we got 11 that we feel like we could win with. Well, clearly that is not the case. We don't even have five right now that are playing winning football consistently for this Clemson Tigers team. And we have who we have. You're right, and you can't predict injuries, and it's unfortunate that Walker Parks is out again for the second season with a what I assume is a similar injury that took him out last year, and it just seems to I don't know what exactly they're going to have to do to get that ankle right again. But his presence or the lack, I should say, of his presence is felt along this offensive line. It was felt last year. It's certainly being felt this year. It's frustrating because these guys rolling in aren't first team or first year players in the program. They've been in this program for a while, and they just don't seem ready for the moment. And to me, that's not acceptable, and it's kind of head scratching, to be completely honest, how these guys can be in the program for 2 sometimes 3 years, and they get an opportunity to come in and play because of injury, and they look like they're not ready at all. So I wouldn't mind seeing some of these younger guys that we have brought in get some playing time. Go see what they have. um, there seems to be some issues, chemistry issues, development issues. I don't know, but the offensive line definitely has got to start playing a lot better. We should have been able to run at will on the Syracuse team. Anytime we wanted 5 yards, we should have been able to get it, no doubt about it. But yet I saw play after play of third and short and fourth and short, and us getting stuffed in the backfield against a defense this small. You can't get 2 yards on fourth down. You can't get 2 yards on third down against this defensive line. I mean, really? They're about as undersized as you can get in Division One college football. I mean, if you can't reestablish the line of scrimmage against those guys, it makes me wonder, how you did it at all against a team like Florida State, as you mentioned. So, um, a lot of room for improvement there, for sure. But you just got to go back to the drawing board. But 35 rush attempts for 126 yards, that ain't it. That's not it. Um,
No.
but luckily, Cade, you know, did what he did, and played a pretty great game, and definitely got us rolling on the road. And the wide receiving core responded as well. Um, But let's shift gears to the defensive side of the ball real quick, and let's talk about the defense as a whole. Some of the plays that the secondary gave up. Some of the times that we kind of lost contain with Garrett Schrader, which is to be expected against a guy like him. How do you think the defense performed overall against Syracuse, and where do you think we were lacking today? As far as just from an execution standpoint, or anything like that.
Yeah, I thought the defense as a whole, I thought it was a pretty strong performance. I mean, you can nitpick here or there, but I mean, today they played well. They came out early. They forced turnovers, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing is that this defense is today forced the turnovers that Clemson normally would have made.
Yeah,
And that helps a ton. It helped the offense get going. I mean, you're not always going to be able to force turnovers and like that, like 3 turnovers every single game, and get points off of them, and get off to an early lead like that. But it was nice to see Clemson actually do it for once today, because after 4 weeks of watching this team shoot itself in the foot and fall behind in the turnover margin, it was nice to see a team. It was nice to see this Clemson team kind of flip the script a little bit. And so, like I said, thought the defensive line played well. Shout out to Justin Maskell. I've been one of Justin Maskell's biggest, critics, questioners. I don't know what word that would be.
Yeah.
But thought he played pretty phenomenal today. And he's making havoc plays. He's getting in the backfield. He was good against the run today.
He had that big hit on Schrader in the middle of the
Obviously, yeah, he
field.
forced that fumble early. That set the tone. That was good to see. I thought he played really well. I think the back seven, I thought they kind of got it together as the game went on. And shout out to Barrett Carter, thought he played well. Certain players in the secondary played well. They did get lucky at times that maybe a better quarterback, better throws probably would have beaten them on certain plays. I didn't think Sheridan Jones played all that great. Probably should have gotten beat a couple more times than he actually did, but he was fortunate. Jaden Lucas, thought he held up pretty well for the most part. Thought when he tried to come down and tackle at times, that was not very good. And that was a big theme in the first half, especially the tackling was pretty shoddy. So that has to get better.
Which is surprising for him because he's a pretty physical player. So that surprises me that he struggled as much as he did, in especially in the tackling department, because he tends to be a guy that is willing to come down and hit some people. So, maybe just a tough game for him today in that.
Yeah, and but Syracuse took a lot of shots downfield. I was kind of surprised. I wasn't expecting them to do it as much as they did, but they clearly did not respect the corners. Clemson's corners all that much. But they held up pretty well at times. It wasn't perfect, but they didn't give up too many big plays, fortunately. And I think they played about as well as you could have asked, especially with Nate Wiggins being out. So it was good to see. Thought Shelton Lewis, true freshman, thought he played well. But yeah, not too much to complain about. Just minor fixes here or there need to be it needs to be better. And I thought the linebackers got better as the game went on. Jeremiah Trotter did not have his best game today. He really has not played up to what he was billed to be so far this year. But he a lot of missed tackles in the first half. Obviously, he had that. It was kind of a tough ask, but he gave up that touchdown in the third quarter. He was on a running back, so it is what it is. But he made up for it. He dropped a pick also, but then he made up for it and got that interception. Late in the game that set up with that Clemson's final score. So it was good to see him kind of bounce back and kind of help the team that way. But I think the defense as a whole pretty complete performance and nothing too
Yeah, I know Tiggs got in earlier.
There goes my internet.
Yeah, you're skipping out a little bit, but I saw Tiggs get in a little earlier and say, how about that sack total today? 5 total sacks for the Tigers, almost matching our season total to this point, which I think was 6 coming into this Syracuse game. So definitely got a lot of pressure on Garrett Schrader today, made him uncomfortable in the pocket, got him to the ground a lot, which is what Clemson was missing early on in the season, right? We were getting pressure on different QBs, but we weren't bringing them to the ground. And today that changed quick, fast, and in a hurry. And they get 5 good sacks against Garrett Schrader today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was clear. I mean, they were not comfortable. They didn't allow him to be comfortable back there. I thought they did a good job for the most part of keeping contained and not letting him scramble a ton. Didn't really beat Clemson a ton with his legs. And it was clear that the Syracuse offense, when they realized they weren't really going to be able to do much in the traditional, their drop back game and find a whole lot of open guys, they were like, okay, well, we're just going to have to take shots because they weren't running the ball effectively. And Schrader was, he was pretty much held in, and contained inside the pocket a lot of the game. So, it was just like, well, our only matchup advantage is hopefully the height of our receivers against their corners. And Schrader it was clear he was not very comfortable throwing those types of balls. Because he was consistently throwing them. He was leading them out of bounds, inaccurate. And that's what you want. Those are low percentage throws, and then those are those 50-50 balls. And so I thought it was a good game plan by Wes Goodwin, and the defense answered the challenge. And they it was sloppy at times, but they played fired up for the most part, and they played complementary football, and that's something that Clemson hasn't been able to do a ton over the past couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the defense did everything they needed to do in order to set Clemson up for a win today, right? Forcing 3 turnovers, 5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. They hit Garrett Schrader 8 times in this game. They hurried him a couple more times. There were definitely flying around. You saw some of the speed on Clemson's defense today on some of those perimeter plays where I can think of one where Barrett Carter kind of got out and blew up kind of a swing pass or something behind the line of scrimmage. I can't remember what the exact play was for Syracuse, but I mean he just came downhill quick, fast, and in a hurry, and just blew up the play. And you saw the athleticism and the speed on Clemson's defense today, for sure. I think it was a good overall game for them. But we keep having, and I know we touched on it a little bit, but turnovers, right? I mean, yeah, did the Clemson defense give up 14 points? Yeah, but one of those was off of, again, another turnover on the offense that turned into a score, right? So I think that now makes 8 turnovers on the season for something like 42 points scored against on all of those turnovers. So we really are putting ourselves in a bad situation. I know it didn't amount to much today, but those big time turnovers deep in our own territory, and those pick sixes and return for touchdown type deal, we really gotta clean that stuff up. It seems to still be a part of this Clemson team. Like you said earlier, we don't seem to have a turnover free game in this team. It doesn't seem possible right now. But again, we only turned it over once today. It was a bad turnover, bad fumble by Brenning Stool, almost returned for a score. Dude almost stepped out of bounds. I wish he would have, but he didn't. He recovered it inbounds and ran for a little bit, and then they punched it into the end zone to make it make their score 14. But outside of that, I don't think Syracuse was really going to put up any more points against this defense. The defense was flying around, and they were playing really well. So the offense really has to stop putting our defense in these terrible no-win situations when it comes to these inexplicable turnovers. And another thing that I think is we got to start finishing in the red zone. Too many times we are getting into the red zone this season, and we're not finishing. And today it happened a couple times. There was a couple missed field goals and stuff like that. But that 4th and 2 right inside the 5-yard line where we were stopped. I mean, we got to finish those drives. You just got to, when you get down in the red zone, you got to be able to finish those drives. And Clemson is struggling at that this season.
Yeah, and it's kind of frustrating, watching, because it just, once they get down there, it seems like it's like the offensive line isn't very physical, in short yardage situations, and I don't think you're using your personnel to the best of your ability, in that area. You're not really giving some of your better playmakers a chance, and then I don't know why they continue to run Shipley when you need a yard or two, when you have a bigger, more physical back that can fall forward and not just run into the back of an offensive lineman. But that's besides the point. Especially knowing your kicking situation, you have to be able to be better at punching it in, because To Jonathan White's credit, he made his one red zone field goal attempt.
Right.
But obviously he missed that one. He missed that one before the half.
Yeah. Missed the
And,
one before the half.
yeah, you have to be able to continue to punch it in, because if you're not going to be able to rely on getting 3 each time you go down there,
which clearly we
uh,
cannot. Our kicking situation is less than ideal at this point, and that's no slight to Jonathan Weiss, and he's out there doing the best that he can, and I think he'll continue to probably get a little bit more consistent, but he's in a tough position, man. So we really do got to finish in the red zone. We cannot rely on 3 points. 3 points is not a give me for Clemson right now, regardless of how close we are. 3 points is not a give me for us. So we got to play for those touchdowns, and it should always be touchdown first, but especially for this team, because your kicking situation and it's not great. So you got to finish drives. You got to be aggressive down there. You can't play for 3 points at any point in time. You really Clemson cannot afford to play for 3 points. They gotta start finishing in the red zone. They gotta become more aggressive in the red zone.
Absolutely. Speaking of special teams, really, the special teams continues to be just kind of a head scratcher in general. I don't really, honestly, other than your punting, which is kind of the opposite of what happened, how it was last year. It was like, man, special teams is playing really well, but God, can we not punt? But Aiden Swanson, I thought he had a really, really solid game. He did a good job of, pinning Syracuse back at times, and he didn't kick it back in the back of the end zone for touchbacks when he had. I thought Clemson did a good job of winning the field position battle, and that was in part due to Aiden Swanson. But other aspects of special teams, we don't seem to have a return game at all. The blocking is suspect. And I forgot to mention Aiden Swanson. He did draw that running into the kicker penalty as well.
He did. Shout out to him for that one.
Which was kind of a another one of those. Okay, he kind of sold it a little bit, but
that's what kickers are supposed to do, though.
Right.
Part-time kicker, part-time acting class. You gotta be able to sell those.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm just, the punt return, game is non-existent. It's like there's not really much opportunity for a return, and obviously the teams aren't even really kicking the Clemson in the kick return game. So it's like, what do you do? Clemson needs a special teams coach. I've said it forever. They need a real special teams coach. They need a guy solely dedicated to coaching special teams.
Yes. Please.
I can't, I'm tired of having another position coach handling special teams. Mike Reed that is not what he should be used for. He hasn't, if you go through his resume, he hasn't coached special teams in over a decade, like back when he was with the Eagles or something. I don't even remember. And I think he only coached it for a year or something like that. I need someone who spends all their time, solely dedicating their time to special teams, like Pete Lembo at South Carolina. It's like, why are you? Special teams is such a hidden but important part of the game. That's where a lot of the hidden yardage and stuff comes from, field position, and so much of the game within the game is special teams. And Clemson is just so very average to below average in a lot of areas, and that's not. You should be better. You've got better athletes than than a lot of the teams you play. You should be able to be a pretty good special teams unit, but you're just not, for whatever reason.
I completely agree. I couldn't agree with you more about bringing in a special teams coordinator to just do special teams. It's not a part of the game, like you say, that you talk about very much, or that fans or people, outside of the football team really think about that often, until it comes and burns you in a game. and then everybody's suddenly interested in special teams, right? But it's such a big part of the game, and that's where some of your biggest momentum swings, especially in big games, happen, is on special teams. Some of the biggest momentum swings that happen in football are on special teams, and it just doesn't make sense to not designate a coach to just your sole job is just you focus on special team, you scheme it up, you focus on it, you live, eat, and breathe special teams, right? And Clemson definitely, I agree with you. They absolutely need to invest in that, and do that. Not just one of your coaches that kind of slides over part time to kind of, okay, yeah, this is special teams. All right, cool. But their main focus is, defensive backs or, whatever the case may be. So that definitely 100% needs to happen. But, good win for the Tigers regardless. I know we got into, a little bit of the bad of the game, which is in every game, but overall, a really solid win for the Tigers. Cade came out, he balled out, he's showing his ability to grow in this offense. He's showing that he is more comfortable. He's showing that his decision making is improving, although not perfect. It never will be perfect, but he is improving greatly. We finally got some wide receivers that seem to be consistently stepping up, so that is a good thing. Hopefully, we get some of these injured guys back soon, in Nate Wiggins and Antonio Williams and other guys. Hopefully, we get them back soon. But overall, man, you can't complain. Clemson got back in the win column. It was a nice win. It was a 31-14 win. Noon kickoff in Syracuse, New York. You mentioned it earlier in the show. This hasn't been a stadium that's been very kind to Clemson. We've only lost once, but there's been a lot of very uncomfortable, close games in the dome up there in Syracuse, New York. And today was not one of those. Clemson pretty much controlled the entire game and went up there and got it done. We are now got a win in the ACC column, and we're back in the win column for the season. So, here's on to the next game. We got to continue to win. That's all we can do at this point, is keep winning football games and let the chips fall where they may.
Yep. And you've got another opportunity to kind of, build on this performance next week. You're back in the Valley against Wake Forest.
Yep.
And this team is just, I think they are of the mindset one game at a time. They know that they don't control their own destiny within the conference in the playoff race or in the conference. But they want to win football games. This team is still prideful. They still care. And you saw them play like it today. Like I said, wasn't perfect. A lot of stuff to clean up, but I predicted 33-24 in the pregame show. So, they exceeded my expectations. There you
go.
I expected a struggle, but I didn't expect them to win the turnover battle like they did. So, that's all you can ask for, really.
Absolutely.
And they covered the spread. If you can.
And they covered the spread. There's still life in this football team. I like, and one of the last thing you mentioned was, this team's still fighting. They still look like they're playing for something. And that's all you could hope for, man. They're not going to quit. This team is not going to quit. It's a one-game season, like you mentioned at this point. So let's just keep winning football games and see what happens. The ACC is likely off the table. The playoffs is certainly off the table. But you know what? All we can do is win the rest of our games, and then we'll see where we stand at the end of the season. Can't do anything about the two previous losses, and I got a lot of hope for this Clemson Tigers team. They look good. The offense looks like it's starting to figure things out. The defense is playing well. And I think by year's end, you will look up and you will see a much improved Clemson Tigers team. We're gonna, we've obviously already gone through some growing pains this season. We're probably going to go through some more as the season progresses on. But again, that's what has to happen from time to time. And we'll take the good with the bad, and we keep winning. Who knows what happens?
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll turn it over to the comment section. I think we covered pretty much everything we wanted to cover in the game. We'll turn it over to the comment section for the next 5 or so minutes. See what you guys, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and get them into the chat. If you guys got any comments or anything that you want us to talk about, go ahead and get it into the chat now. We'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. And while you guys are doing that, I'll mention we do a show here, the All In Show, right here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel every Thursday at 7 p.m. with me and Jordan Bowman. We talk about, we do game previews, we talk about the Clemson Tigers and all sorts of stuff. So please come join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. We'll be right here on this channel doing game previews and kind of turning the page on the previous week's game as well. We also do that show year round, so it doesn't end when the season ends. We continue to do it year round, talking about Clemson football and college football. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We got 26 people in the live chat right now. If you have not hit that subscribe button, I don't know what you're doing. You're missing out. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. If you haven't hit the like button, definitely do that for us. It's completely free. And it'll help us out. And both me and Jordan will really appreciate it. Thank you for the one super chat that we had tonight. Steele Gamble got in with a $2 super chat. Steele, thank you so much for supporting the channel in that way. We really do appreciate that, man. You are a regular here and always supporting us. So thank you for that. We got anybody
Absolutely.
in the chat section talking about anything, Jordan?
See some people talking about this Ole Miss LSU game. Yeah, I had the Georgia Auburn game.
That game came down to the fourth quarter, right? They were tied up in the fourth.
Yeah, Georgia pulled it out though.
Got it done.
Game-winning score by Brock Bowers. So
surprise.
Yeah,
surprise. Brock Bowers gets in.
Yeah, Auburn was giving them all they could handle though. Philip gets in. He says, I think Clemson's biggest problem is the offensive line. Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree. I think that's your position that's not playing well. It's the most important position, that the position group that's not playing very well, or at least consistently playing well, because they've had moments where I think the past 2 weeks, the pass protection has been not bad, but
yep,
unable to really. You haven't really been able to consistently get a run game. Need to solidify the right guard position. The rest of the line is solid. Yeah, I think there's still some moments. I don't think it's just right guard, but that's definitely the position that is consistently giving you below average play, and you have to fix that. You got to fix that. Offensive line and special teams seem to always be overlooked when recruiting.
Hey, that's our boy Smitty right there, getting in there. Thanks for showing up, man. Appreciate it.
Didn't even process that, because he usually is going by.
He was giving me all the updates when I was at the softball game earlier today. So shout out Smitty for keeping me up to date on the game.
Absolutely, good to see you, man. But yeah, offensive line especially. Yeah, you've seen Clemson, make attempts to address it. I mean, it's not like Robert Gunn was one of the top kickers in his class. I mean, I don't think they're ignoring special teams. I don't think they really know what they're doing. What they're doing when they get there. And then offensive line, I don't think they're overlooking it. They just can't. They're just having issues, recruiting that position. I don't think they're overlooking it. I just think it's tough to get big time offensive linemen when you don't have much of a track record to sell. That's all.
And some of it is negative recruiting against Clemson because of the lack of talent that we have put in the NFL at that particular position. So that definitely works against us.
Insane Mob, good to. Oh, I did not.
My
I didn't
bad.
click on this comment. What in the world is going on? Okay. Insane Mob gets in. He says, "Who's next on Clemson's schedule?" Yeah, Clemson plays Wake Forest.
Wake Forest.
Next week at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah, we got
good to see you, man.
We got Wake Forest next week, and then we roll into a bye right before the Miami game. So,
yep. Yeah, good to see you, man. Insane Mob, Florida State guy. He was here before the Florida State game, and he's kind of stuck around. So,
hey, man, thanks for sticking with us, man. We appreciate it. We love having people from other teams in the comment section. So, thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, Taco Gaming gets in and says, he says O-line still needs to get in the weight room. They're not strong enough. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know if it's a strength. I don't think it's a strength thing. So there's a difference between raw strength and football players. So there's a difference between raw strength and play strength. I don't think this offensive line has a lot of play strength, and that a lot of that has to do with, some of it is technique, some of it is want to. And it's kind of a mentality you have to have because, I'll say this: Syracuse's defensive line, while little, they're not like weak. They've got physically strong players, but you still, when you have that size advantage, you shouldn't be getting, pushed around and getting stalwarted like they were. So that was disappointing. Why y'all so hard on the O-line? They played us great last week. I mean, I agree. I mean, I thought the offensive line played about as well as you could have asked them to last week. But
it's more just their inconsistency, I think, and they're just they do play good at times. They're just not consistent at all, and when we start having injuries, like to Walker Parks and stuff, that's where we really start running into issues. And I know that, that goes for every team. You lose a starter or two and, suddenly it looks like a completely different line. I understand that. But, guys behind him have been here for several years. And they don't seem ready when they come in. That's my problem. How do you have a guy sitting there supposedly developing for 2 and 3 years, and he finally gets a chance to get some real playing time in a real game where it really matters, and he doesn't look like he's ready? That's when you kind of scratch your head and like, what is going
on? Big Mick gets in, says offensive line should not be a problem when Cade speeds up his. I think pass protection was pretty good for the most part. So I'm not even really complaining about. I mean, Cade got sacked once or a couple times today, but he did. It was because there was nobody open. Those were like more coverage sacks than really the offensive line playing poorly. So I mean, I'm not too mad at pass protection today. I thought they held up pretty well for the most part. And Syracuse was definitely dialing up pressure especially on third downs, because that's how teams have been able to get success against this offense. Especially when they're not, Clemson's offense isn't really being productive on standard downs. So it's, that's just kind of how it goes. But I thought they held up well given those circumstances, because Syracuse was trying to get pressure on Cade. Oh my gosh, man, StreamYard is going crazy today. It's probably my internet. But D-Rock Irish gets in. He says, great rebound game, Tigers. Good teams find a way to win. Well, we thank you, D-Rock. Obviously, Notre Dame has a fairly big game themselves in 10 minutes.
I'll be watching that game.
Yeah, I will be as well. That's going to be interesting. Duke is a tough team. They're a very good team. That's but Notre Dame, I think if they're truly the team that that they want to be, then they're going to bounce back and they'll have a pretty strong performance. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. I think Notre Dame is going to take care of business tonight. Smitty gets in again. He says it would definitely be easier to get some 50-year guys out of the portal. Yeah, Clemson definitely could have benefited from a portal offensive lineman or two, but
for sure,
it's not necessarily for lack of trying. Well, at least last year it wasn't. This year, it's
this year we didn't.
I think going in, you felt pretty good, at least about your starters. You returned 4 or 5. And you thought, hey, this offensive line could very well be a strength. But of course, when injuries start to pile up and you got some question marks, like you did at left tackle, it can what you thought was a pretty good line all of a sudden looks a lot different. So it's kind of a conundrum. You got anything else? I gotta get out of here in a couple minutes. So
no, I'm good, man. I think we've gotten everything that we needed to get to so far. So we'll go ahead and wrap this show up. Thank you, everybody who is in here right now. If you're watching this back on replay, thank you so much for watching our show. Again, another Clemson Tiger postgame live in the books for me and Jordan Bowman right here on the Voice of College Football. We got 32 people in here right now in the live chat. Please, if you are not subscribed, even if you're not a Clemson fan, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Stick around with us. We like to interact with other fan bases as well. And then also hit that like button for us. Really helps us out on these live videos as we try to grow the channel. We got a super chat in here. Thank you so much, Drew, for coming in and supporting us with a $2 super chat. It is greatly appreciated. He said special teams burned us in the natty versus Alabama. Yes, it did. They did that kind of pooch onside kick that was recovered, and that was all she wrote for that national championship game.
And the Kenyon Drake return for a touchdown that put them up 2 scores later in that fourth quarter as well. So yeah.
So
we don't have very fond memories of that for sure. All right.
All right, everybody. Thank you for getting in here. Tiggs gets in and says Tiger Paul for Heisman. Absolutely, man. Vote for me. I deserve it. Okay. I deserve it. But again, thank you all for getting in here. We'll be right here on this channel, the Voice of College Football Clemson channel, this Thursday at 7 p.m. Come check out the show. Until next time, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. And go Tigers.
Later, y'all.